Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Panchakalpa Chubhischa Kripasindu Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So it's July 10th, 2024, and class online with the Bhakti Center in New York, which Krishna willing, I'll be there in 15 days. And we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 65, Lord Balaram visits from Vrindavan, Text 1. Shri Sukha Uvacha Balabhadra Kurushrestha Bhagavan Ratamashtita Suridikshur Utkanta Prayayo Nandagokulam. Shri Sukha Uvacha. Sukadev Goswami said, Balabhadra, Lord Balarama, Kuru Shrestha, O best of the Kurus, King Parikshit, Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, Ratam, on his chariot, Ashtitaha, mounted, Surit, his well-wishing friends, Didrikshahu, wishing to see, Utkanta, eager, Prayayau, traveled, Nandagokulam, to the cowherd village of Nanda Maharaj. BBT translation. Srila Sukadev Goswami said, O best of the Kurus, once Lord Balaram, eager to visit his well-wishing friends, mounted his chariot and traveled to Nanda Gokula. BBT purport. As Srila Jiva Goswami points out, Lord Balaram's journey to Sri Vrindavan is also described in the Harivamsa, Vishnu Parva 46.1. Kasyashchid attakalasya smitva gopeshu soridam. We have the surit and soridam. Jagad maiko vrajam rama krishnas yanu matestita. Translation of that is remembering the deep friendship he once enjoyed with the cowherd folk, Lord Rama, which means Balarama, went alone to Vraja, having taken Lord Krishna's permission. End of that translation of that quote. The simple residents of Vrindavana were aggrieved that Lord Krishna had gone to live elsewhere. So Lord Balarama went there to console them. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur addresses the question of why Lord Krishna, the great ocean of pure love, did not also go to Vraja. In explanation, the Acharya provides the following two verses. Prayasi prema vikyata pitara vati vatsalau prema vasyascha krishnastams twaktva na katam eshyati iti mat vaivayadava pratyabadnan harer gatau raja preme pravardiswa lila dinatvam iyusha. And the translation of those two, of that Sanskrit written by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is as follows. The Yadus thought the Lord's beloved girlfriends are famous for their pure ecstatic love, and his parents are extremely affectionate toward him. Lord Krishna is controlled by pure love, so if he goes to see them, how will he be able to leave them and come back to us? With this in mind, the Yadus prevented Lord Hari from going, knowing that he becomes subservient to the pastimes in which he reciprocates the ever-increasing love of the inhabitants of Vraja. Shri Sukha Uvacha Balabhadra Kurushrestha Bhagavan Ratam Ashtitaha Surididrikshur Utkanta Prayayo Nanda Gokulam. Sukadeva Goswami said, "O best of the Kurus, once Lord Balaram, eager to visit his well-wishing friends, mounted his chariot and traveled to Nanda Gokula." So this starts the Leela where Balaram visits Vrindavan after Krishna and Balaram have left. So Balaram goes back, and at least externally it appears in the Bhagavatam that Krishna never returns to Vrindavan in his manifest pastimes at all. Of course, our acharyas say that after the killing of Dantavakra, that he does indeed go to Vrindavan, and that he takes all he sends basically all the residents back to Godhead. So that's the opinion of our acharyas. However, again, in the Bhagavatam itself, it doesn't appear that Krishna ever returns. So the question, of course, is there, well, okay, if Lord Balaram's going for a visit, why doesn't Krishna go for a visit? Okay? We all have experiences that when we have family members who live at a distance, that they visit, right? I mean, that's just what happens. Just like I live close by to my daughter and her daughter's family. So my granddaughter, her husband, and her two sons, and my grandson-in-laws, my granddaughter's husband, his father is visiting. So his father's visiting his son and daughter-in-law and grandchildren. Although he lives quite far away and he doesn't have the means to visit very often, still he's visiting, right? Or we have two sons on the west coast of the United States, and I visit them. I try to visit them at least once a year, if possible, twice a year. Sometimes they might come and visit here. And this is normal behavior. If you have people who are your family, who are your friends, who are very dear to you, even if your permanent domicile is at a separate place, then you definitely go and visit them. So Krishna said, when he left Vrindavan, I shall return. In addition, of course, we hear that Krishna never leaves Vrindavan at all. So this whole thing is very, very mysterious. We have in today's verse the word surit. And Srila Jiva Goswami is quoting a verse from the Harivamsa that also says like this, so ridham. Ridha means heart, and su means very auspicious. A surit is a very, very dear friend. So all of us have people that we work with, right? Our work colleagues, we have acquaintances, we know their face, maybe we only know their name, we know something about them. And then we have our ordinary friends, people we'd say, oh, that's my friend, but we're not that close. And then we have our close friends, and then we have our best friends. The nowadays they call them the BFFs, the best friend forever. So we have our really best friends, and some of those people may also be family. Many people consider their spouse to be their best friend, or their parent or their child to be their best friend, or maybe their sibling or something like that. So sometimes those people also they may also be a colleague. So sometimes our best friend is a work colleague, sometimes our best friend is a family member. But we all have some people that are very, very close. And this is called a surid. Surid means they're very dear to the heart. They're very, very dear to the heart. If there's some tragedy to an acquaintance, we may feel sorry. But if there's a tragedy to a surit, then we're going to rush. We're going to drop everything. We're going to rush to help them. We're going to be there for them, etc. If there's some celebration for an acquaintance or a colleague, we may participate. But if there's a celebration for a surit, then we're definitely going to be there for them. We're going to, in some way, we're going to be participating. So this is the situation. Krishna and Balaram consider actually all their pure devotees like this, but especially the residents of Vrindavan. So all of our acharyas identify that the residents of Vrindavan have the most intimate relationship with the Lord. Of course, this shouldn't be misunderstood that other devotees are less happy or feel less favored by the Lord. That's not the case. Everybody feels fully satisfied in their relationship with the Lord. Those who are, the living entity who's the flower in Krishna's turban is completely satisfied, although that relationship from a certain perspective is not as intimate as, say, one of Krishna's friends that he wrestles with and jokes with. You're not going to joke around with your flowers and your turban. It's a very different kind of relationship. But the flower is feeling completely satisfied. So all of Krishna's devotees, all of the devotees of various forms of the Lord, they all feel, I'm in the right relationship for me. I'm fully happy. At the same time, we can say that the residents of Vrindavan, and as Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is pointing out, especially Krishna's girlfriends in Vrindavan, are the most intimate. Krishna is most relaxed around them, like our very best friends. So we might ask, if this is true, how do we put these two things together? That, okay, the residents of Vrindavan, especially the young girls there, they're the most dear friends of Krishna and Balaram. They're surits, and even materially, we visit our surits, especially Mathura and Vrindavan are very close. I mean, Dwarka and Vrindavan are quite a distance, but Mathura is quite close. Any of you who've been to India, you see it's not very far at all. I mean, by car, it's an hour drive, maybe less, but half an hour. So, why isn't he coming? Doesn't he love them? Doesn't he care? How can he love them as the Surit and yet go and not come back? And why just Balaram going? So our acharyas are explaining, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is explaining that the Yadus were scared that, well, if Krishna goes to Vrindavan to visit, he won't come back and stay here. So we have this kind of meeting and separation that Krishna or Balaram or any of the forms of the Lord, they're sometimes with their devotees and they're sometimes not with their devotees. Even though they're Surit, even though they're best of friends. So let's get a little bit into the mystery of this meeting and separation. Now, in our material life, material sense gratification, we have to do something called Bhoga Tyaga. Bhoga means enjoyment and Tyaga means renunciation. If we enjoy something constantly, it will become boring, and eventually it will actually become repulsive. I tell this story quite a bit. I read about this man who, as a teenager, worked in an ice cream shop, and one of the perks of the job was that he could get as much ice cream as he wanted. And so he ate so much ice cream that he got bored with it, but he kept eating it because it was there. And eventually he actually became nauseated by ice cream. And he said, now for the rest of my life, I'm not able to eat ice cream. I find it nauseating. We need some space away from something. Prabhupada gives the example, you work and then you need a weekend off. And then, you go on vacation, but you can't just stay on vacation. Then you want to be active again. We have these waves. We do something, then we have to leave it for a while. If you're eating constantly, you don't even taste the food anymore. So we have this Bhoga Tyaga. And this Bhoga Tyaga in material life is an indication that the things in and of themselves are really not that pleasurable. It's one of the indicators that whatever we try to enjoy materially has a limit. And if you try to push it beyond that limit, it ceases to be pleasurable. The famous Christian writer C.S. Lewis wrote that the idea of Maya is that you need something more and more and enjoy it less and less. You crave it more and more and you enjoy it less and less. And this is actually the whole story of material life. If you think about someone who's addicted to some intoxicant, at first the intoxicant makes them feel some kind of pleasure. But gradually, if they become addicted to it, they need the intoxicant just to feel normal. It doesn't really give them any pleasure anymore. Yes. So we might think this meeting and separation with Krishna is like that, is something like Bhoga Tyaga. And It is and it isn't. Whatever we experience in this world has to come from something in the Supreme. Janma yasya yataha. Everything that we experience has some origin in Krishna. Right? It's not possible to experience anything in this world that doesn't have some basis in Krishna. At the same time, the original is radically different than what we're experiencing here. Just like an object is radically, radically different from the reflection or the shadow of that object. If you see a reflection of a pizza and you try to interact with it for enjoyment, all you get is a hard surface, right? Maybe some of you have seen, sometimes there's pictures taken of some animal trying to eat a picture of food. So it looks like food. What to speak of a shadow of food? That's even less interactive, less able to get any pleasure out of it. So our Bhoga Tyaga is a reflection of the meeting and separation, because our renouncing a sense object allows us to then enjoy it again when we interact with it. So there's something like that, the original like that is happening in the spiritual world in meeting and separation. That the separation increases the joy of meeting. However, a marked difference, like when I'm not eating pizza, I'm literally not eating pizza. Now, my getting some separation from pizza allows me to enjoy it when I eat it again. Right? And even if I ate pizza for breakfast, lunch, dinner every day, I would stop enjoying it. But at least I have to have a break. I can't be eating it. I can't be nibbling on pizza 24 hours a day and enjoy it. But when I get that separation from pizza, during that time of separation, there's no pleasure happening at all. And of course, even when I'm enjoying the pizza, it's very limited pleasure. It's not really involved. It's not some holistic, unbounded pleasure. It's involving some of my senses in a limited way. Whereas spiritually, all pleasure is unbounded, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita 6:20. All pleasure is unbounded, and is explained in the first verse of the Shikshashtaka. It's always expanding. And the pleasure is also experienced in separation from the pleasure. So there is no separation from the pleasure. The separation from the pleasure is also enjoying the pleasure. In fact, our acharyas explain that the separation from the pleasure is generally more pleasurable than the pleasure. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains this in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where Gopakumar, and if you haven't read that book, I really highly recommend it. So in part 2 of the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Gopakumar gradually experiences higher and higher and higher and higher degrees of pleasure. So first he's on the earth as a cowherd boy, he becomes a king on earth, and then he becomes Indra, and then he becomes, some great sages on higher planets, then he becomes Brahma, then he goes in the subtle coverings of the universe, then he goes to Vaikuntha, then he goes to Ayodhya, then he goes to Dwarka, then he goes to Vrindavan, and each place he's experiencing progressively more and more and more enjoyment. Brihad Bhagavatamrita by Srila Sanatana Goswami. There's one translation by Dasarasa Sutta, and there's another translation by the BBT that was translated by Gopi Pranadhana. So he gets to Vrindavan, and there he's with Krishna, but then he also experiences separation. And he says when Krishna leaves Vrindavan and goes to Mathura, and he's in the spiritual world, and he's talking about this, and he says, why don't we go to Mathura with him? He said, because the happiness of being in Vrindavan in separation from Krishna dances on the heads of all other happiness. Srimati Radharani says something very similar. She said, when I'm with Krishna, I see one Krishna. When I'm separated from Krishna, I see millions of Krishnas. I see Krishna everywhere. So this separation actually increases the ecstasy and increases the love. And It is this type of relationship that we all desire. We all desire to have loving relationships where the feeling of love, that feeling of relationship increases, where the happiness of the relationship increases, and so forth. And in this world, most of the time, that doesn't happen. Most of the time, it's the opposite. A young man and young woman fall in love, and their love is very, very intense. They can't think about anything else but the person that they love. And over some time, it's not so intense anymore. It kind of settles into something, but the intensity is gone. And, we hope that we're going to love our spouse more at 80 than we did at 20. But in many cases, that's just not the case. Or, anything like that. Even an object, you get a new phone or a new car or something, and at first you're thinking about it constantly, and you're looking at all of its new features and checking it out. And after a while, it's just your phone or it's just your car. And that feeling, it fades over time. Or, you have a new baby and you're meditating on this child constantly. You can't even go in another room. And then eventually the child grows up and they have their own life. And, you may not think about them for a week. And the intensity decreases. Right? I mean, the love matures and it may stay, but it's not increasing. There's a nice example in the Bhagavatam of Priyavrata and his wife, Bahirshmati. And it said that the love between the two of them increased daily. Aniruddha and Usha also, it said that every day their love for each other increased 4 times. So this is what we're looking for. And that's the relationship that Krishna has with his devotees. And this coming and going, this meeting and separation, is one of the many, 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 many ways in which Krishna and the devotees are having this increase. That the separation, they're experiencing an increase in the attachment and an increase in the love and an increase in the ecstasy, that then when they meet, that is then increased. So the meeting increases the ecstasy of the separation, and the separation increases the ecstasy of the meeting, and it goes on dynamically forever. It's constantly expanding. There's no limit. Krishna himself is always expanding, and Krishna's love for his devotees and the relationship with the devotees is always expanding. So it's interesting that Srila Rupa Goswami, in his very important treatise for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we could say that it is this book, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which Srila Prabhupada summarized in the Nectar Devotion, that is the key literature for us Gaudiya Vaishnavas, us followers of Lord Chaitanya, that really differentiates our philosophy and practice from, say, other devotees of Krishna, other sampradayas. And there he describes the 5 main relationships one can have with the Lord: as a servant, as a friend, as a parent or superior, or as a wife or lover. And for each of these, also neutrality, just reverence. So for each of these, and this is described in the Western Ocean of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, for each of these, he describes many different aspects of the relationship. And one of the aspects he described, this is at the end of each of his description, the meeting and separation. So for those in neutral love, meeting and separation is very simple. Krishna is either hidden or visible. For those who are Krishna's servants or subordinates, or Krishna's friends, or Krishna's parents, or so-called superiors, then there's 2 types of separation and 3 types of meeting, and they're related to each other. So there's the separation when you haven't seen Krishna ever, or you feel like that you've never seen Krishna ever. Of course, in the spiritual world, in one sense, that's impossible. But in Krishna's pastimes in this planet, at least from an external, superficial point of view, that's possible. Right, that Radha hasn't met Krishna yet, or Rukmini hasn't met Krishna yet, or something like that. So the separation before meeting, and then the meeting that corresponds to that, is the first meeting ever. Then the second type of separation is you've already met Krishna, and after meeting him, you're separated. And the second type of meeting that corresponds to that, you've met him, you're separated, you meet him again. And then there's a third type of meeting where you're always there. You're always with Krishna. But of course, even then, there's some sort of coming and going. In the romantic relationships that Krishna has, and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami just describes in very brief terms in his Ujjwala Nilamani, he describes in depth. So he also has this before you've ever met Krishna and separated after meeting. So the same with the other rasas, geographical separation, so to speak. And then he has another category of separation that doesn't exist in the other rasas, and that is anger. That there's some separation due to some loving anger. You know, the Radharani's angry about Krishna for some reason, and therefore she's not with him. Or she's with him, but she feels like she's not with him. There's a wall, so to speak. Of course, that's not anger like in this world. So these are the separations and meeting in each of the rasas. So here we see Balaram coming and going. Balaram and Krishna left together for Mathura to kill Kamsa and to please Vasudeva and Devaki. And now Balaram is going back to Vrindavan, and today's verse is going to start the pastime of Balaram coming to Vrindavan. And of course, we have Krishna leaves and he doesn't come back to Vrindavan. Again, at least externally, if we just take the verses of the Bhagavatam at face value, he doesn't come back. Now, even in the spiritual world, as described again in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, in all of the realms of the spiritual world, there's some apparent coming and going. So in Vaikuntha, Vishnu appears to leave in order to incarnate in the material world, and then he's gone for a while and he comes back. And Ram in Ayodhya, and Krishna in Dwarka. Krishna in Dwarka sometimes goes to visit the Pandavas in Hastinapur, and then he's gone. And Sanatana Goswami is explaining how Krishna apparently leaves Vrindavan and goes to Mathura, and then kills Kamsa, and then comes back to Vrindavan. So there's this apparent coming and going, even in this spiritual world. Now, one very interesting thing, which is really brought out by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on today's verse, is that one person's meeting is often another person's separation. So Krishna is separated, ostensibly anyway, from the residents of Vrindavan in today's verse, but he's with the Yadus. And the Yadus don't want him to go to Vrindavan and have a meeting there, because then he'll be separated from them. And this situation that one group of devotees meeting is another group of devotees separation is Queen Kunti's dilemma, and why she prays, let the sneha pasu, let the rope of affection between myself and my family members be cut. Because Kunti was, of course, related to the Pandavas as their mother. And then she's also related to the Yadus. So she's like, okay, if I was mentioning, Krishna may leave Dwarka to go to Hastinapur, or leave Hastinapur to go to Dwarka. So Kunti's confused. If I want him to go be in Hastinapur with my sons and their families, then he's not going to be in Dwarka with my parental families. And if he's in Dwarka with my parental families, he's not going to be with my sons. So let me just not be attached to anybody, because otherwise I'm always going to be feeling that Krishna's separated from someone I want him to be with. In the descriptions by our acharyas of Krishna's eightfold daily pastimes, we find that in each time of the day, he's particularly with some of the devotees and not with others. So in the early morning, very early morning, he's still in the forest. He's not in the village. He's with the gopis in the forest. He's with the forest creatures. Then he goes back to the village, where he's primarily first with his parents and then with the cowherd boys, but he's not with the creatures in the forest. Then when he goes back into the forest in the middle of the day with the cowherd boys, he's with the cowherd boys, he's with the forest creatures, but he's not with the gopis, the young gopis, and he's not with the parents. Then he sneaks off in the middle of the day and he's with the gopis. He's not with the cowherd boys, and he's not with his parents. He's just with the gopis. Then when he leaves the gopis, he's with the cowherd boys. Then when he leaves the cowherd boys, he's with his parents. So he has there's basically 2 times, there's 8 parts of the day, and there's like 2 times where he's particularly with the gopis, 2 times he's particularly with the cowherd boys, 2 times he's particularly with the parents, and then he has some mixture of those. So there are times when like, okay, and this is so that Krishna can particularly get into that rasa with those devotees. Just like my youngest son's wife is very close to her mother. And she sometimes just hangs out with her mother. She and her mother just go shopping or they go for a walk, right? Where she doesn't have her husband and her kids around. And sometimes she's just going to be with her husband without her mother and her kids. And sometimes she's just going to be with the kids without her husband and her mother. Right. So all of us have these sort of situations where, like yesterday for dinner, I was with my daughter, my granddaughter, my grandson-in-law, my 2 great-grandsons, my grandson-in-law's father, and one of my grandson-in-law's sisters. But then sometimes I'm just with one of them, right? That I have a relationship or just with one category of relationship. So this meeting and separation, it's acting, first of all, to grow the love. And it's also so Krishna is reciprocating with particular devotees in that mood without the other moods around. Now, there are some times when everyone or nearly everyone is together. So in Vrindavan, this happens when Krishna is dancing on the hoods of Kaliya. The vast majority of the devotees are there. All the forest creatures are there because he's in the forest. The cows are there because he's herding the cows. It's the middle of the day. And everyone goes, although it is described that Rohini, Balaram's mother, does not go. And we don't have time to tell the whole story behind that. But Mother Rohini does not go. Balaram sends her and says, you've got to cook. So I'm sure there's some other people in servitude that are not going. And I'm sure there's some village creatures that aren't going. But generally, everyone's there. Govardhan Leela is a time that really literally everybody is there. So when Krishna lifts Govardhan Hill, all of the devotees in Vrindavan are under Govardhan Hill. Now, when Krishna and Balaram go to Kurukshetra for the solar eclipse, we have a situation where the Krishna's Dwarka devotees are there and Krishna's Vrindavan devotees are there. So that's an interesting situation, although not all. There are some devotees that stay in Dwarka to guard the city, and then the cows don't come from Vrindavan. And so, of course, there have to be devotees, and the forest creatures don't come, the deer don't, and the parrots don't come from Vrindavan. And there have to be devotees there that, also to take care of them. So Krishna also does this meeting and separation in our life as practitioners. Sometimes we feel Krishna's presence very, very strongly in our life. And sometimes it seems that he's hiding from us. And in both of these situations, if we understand that Krishna is our surit, that Krishna is our dearmost friend, our best friend forever, suridam sarvabhutanam, then we can see how in each situation we can grow in our love and we can grow in our happiness in devotional service. So we have 10 minutes for questions and comments and discussions. I see there's 8 things in the chat. Okay, most of that's just. Okay, we have one question in the chat. Is there sometimes increasing love and connection to Krishna, other times getting busy with mundane matters, a kind of bhoga tyaga? It certainly can be. It certainly can be if we're thinking that Krishna is our enjoyable object. One can be a materialistic devotee. And most so-called religious people in the world are, which is what gives religion a bad name. So if you're using Krishna for your sense enjoyment, then yes, it is like that. However, for serious spiritual practitioners, that's not the case. It's rather what's called anista sadhana bhakti. So this going back and forth between focusing on Krishna and focusing on the mundane is a result of having what we call anartas, or some contaminations we haven't yet cured, we haven't yet gotten rid of. And until about 50% of those are gone, it is actually impossible for us to be completely steady. We just can't be. You can try to do it by force for a while, but it won't work. So to become steady, one has to let go of one's anarthas, which is a whole discussion in and of itself, which we definitely do not have time for this morning, how to let go of our anarthas. Okay, we have a question from the Bhakti Center Temple Room. I assume the room isn't asking a question, but somebody in the room. Yes.
Samasabeshu Bhuteshu, that Krishna is equal to everyone.
Yes.
In the sense that he allows everyone equal opportunity to be at the type of orbit that they're most comfortable with. And in the monastic traditions, they have this thing called a special. If you have a group of monks in a monastery or a group of nuns in a convent, and you have a special relationship with one of them, they advise against that. They say that, if you, I've heard Prabhupada say, if you say you love this one, but you don't have the same kind of love to the one that you have trouble dealing with, then it's not really love. There's a form of contamination there because you're partial, or I don't know. This is a kind of a complex subject, but just bringing it up, the idea of like, this one's close to my heart. But in one sense, in spiritual maturity, we love everyone. Underneath everything, everybody loves everybody.
Well,
That's
yes.
who we are. Yes. That's who we are.
Everyone who, well, I can't talk unless you.
It's a paradox.
Yes. So everyone who loves Krishna loves everyone who loves Krishna and loves everyone who Krishna loves. So when you love Krishna, you love everyone. However, we are also persons. And the great pure devotees do have specials. Ramachandra Sangamaje Narottama Das. He had his best friend. Narottama Das had his best friend named Ramachandra. Srimati Radharani has her best friends. I mean, it's explained, Srimati Radharani has billions of associates. And each of the main gopis, have billions of associates. But then they have some that are particularly close. Krishna among his cowherd boys, he has his Priya Sakas and his Priya Sakas. He has these levels of intimacy. So there definitely is like that. And then there's like-mindedness. There's different groups of cowherd boys that have different moods, and they want to hang out with people who have a similar mood. And there's different groups of gopis who have different moods. And we're actually enjoined that we should hang out with people who are like-minded. We may love everybody, but we do have close associates who are like-minded. And I would say this monastic tradition in Christianity is due to a kind of impersonalism and a lack of understanding of rasa. Because one of the main important things in rasa is that you have people who share your type of love. Can one have spiritual connection like not being able to leave Krishna as his greatest devotee? Well, is a spiritual connection where you feel like you can't be separated from Krishna even for a moment. But for all devotees, there's some kind of separation and meeting. And Mike Colley, yes.
Good morning, Hare Krishna.
Good morning, Hare Krishna.
You touched upon something for just a second that I want to, maybe you could go further into, because you talked about, the love for Krishna, the love for family. When you first meet someone and you first fall into bhakti, there's just this ecstatic love, right? And I was taught years ago that maintenance of that love is the hardest thing, right? So do you have any thoughts on ways to maintain that love for Krishna? And not only that, but our friends, our family, and so on. Thank you.
Okay, well, for friends and family, the only way I know of that reliably to grow our love for living beings is to grow our love for Krishna. Because our love for other living beings is always going to be deficient if it's not based on the spiritual. That's You know, if I'm not loving them, if I'm not loving people on a spiritual level, if I'm only loving them on a physical, mental, intellectual, emotional level, then it's it's not going to be a complete love that's able to really maintain and grow the way I would like it to. I mean, it's a lot better than not loving anybody. And it's certainly an indication that we're all originally loving beings. But it's not going to fully satisfy us unless there's also a spiritual connection. Prabhupada calls this soul to soul via the super soul. That if we have a relationship of soul to soul via the super soul, then it does keep growing. How do we maintain and grow our relationship with Krishna? Yes, there's an initial, because that's coming from Krishna. That when we first turn to Krishna, he's like, whoa! And he really shows himself to us. Think of it like, you know, if someone's really hurt us and betrayed us, but we would like to restore the relationship, and they come back and say, I want to fix things, I want to apologize, our first response might be, wow. And our next response is, okay, you need to prove this to me because you've really messed up. So, you know, if the guy who's had affairs with 50 women comes back to his wife and says, I want to make up with you, and, you know, she's probably not going to let him into the house. But she'll come to the door and she'll say, I'm so happy that you want to come back. I've been waiting and praying for you to come back. And look, if you really, you know, you've got to stop your habit of chasing other people. You've got to do some things to demonstrate. And so it might seem like she kind of cools down a bit, but there's like a testing period and a training period, and there's a time of really developing that. And that makes us seem that seems to us that Krishna's become distant. How do we keep that going? Well, you probably already know the answer. It's mostly by hearing from people who love Krishna, being around people who have as much or greater love for Krishna than ourselves, hearing from them, being with them. That helps not only maintain, but it helps it to grow. But we shouldn't be surprised that initial, that now, okay, now you got to work at it. You've got to put in the time. And the work we have to do is letting go of our false ego, which is actually a very joyful thing, but doesn't appear like that to us at first. And the initial feeling that we have of getting rid of our false ego, because we think it's our identity, is something that we fight against and creates this problem. All right, I think it's time to greet the deities. It is 8 o'clock, so we'll have to stop there. Sorry.
Thank you, Urmila, Devi, Dasi. Thank you. Wonderful class.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm really very grateful.
We're now experiencing some separation from the deities. That is to increase our love. Turn on your cameras, please, if you can. That's Donald, right? Everybody pray for Donald.
भगवान की जय।
Jai Shri Shri Radha Murlidhar Shri Guru Chandra Ki Jai. Thank you, Manohar Prabhu. Donald, we're praying for you. Donald Prabhu looks blissful, looks happy. We feel good for him. Jai. Yeah, our Bhakti Care team is there for Anandi and Donald. They're reaching out to them. All right. Thanks, everyone. Wonderful class. Let me see if Urmila Devi is still here. No, she's not. Anyway, just 5 cents. If we want to strengthen our bond with devotees, if we want to increase our love, appreciation, affection for devotees and for Krishna, the best way to do it is to do some devotional service together, collectively, committing to something and following through it together. Sometimes we may not have the time, the desire, the strength, but we still commit to something and do it for Krishna. And that strengthens the relationships big time. I remember I went to a festival, Hare Krishna festival, that was meant for new people to come and have some cultural experience. And as devotee, I was in the back washing pots the whole time. And it was so fun. We were laughing the whole time. I didn't see a single performance, not a single one. I was in the back the whole time, but that experience, I remember to this day. It was just so blissful and ecstatic that nothing can compare to that. So doing service together is the best way to increase our love for fellow devotees and for Krishna. And coming to class is service. We're giving our attention to Krishna. It counts as service, direct service, not just something that you have to mentally connect with Krishna, but it's direct service to Krishna, to Prabhupada, who spent gallons of blood, sweat, and tear to translate the books and make them available to us. Okay, this is the end of my 5 cents. Anyone wants to speak, to reflect? Jeffrey Eckler, where are you? On the porch somewhere, enjoying life for Krishna?
Hare Krishna.
Jeffrey Eckler.
Deep in Maya, Prabhu.
Yeah, deep in Maya. Yeah. Adipusha Prabhu, Jeffrey Eckler is deep in Maya. He's by the pool. How can we help him? How can we make it worse for him?
Krishna loves him.
Yeah, Krishna loves him. That's good.
We have a comment. You want to hear a comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, that apparent contradiction between some people you're very dear and the idea of, on the other hand, are we equally disposed toward everyone in terms of loving everyone? So it seems like a paradox. And as far as I've heard from Srila Prabhupada, that actually everybody does love everybody, but it's manifested in different ways.
That's right.
We are equally disposed toward everyone. We do love everyone, but you don't love the tiger the same way you love your sister. You keep the tiger behind the bars because it'll eat you.
I love.
That doesn't mean that you don't love the tiger. It's just
That's
that
right.
It's just like a father has 2 children, and one of them he's spanking, and one of them he's embracing, but he loves them both. It's not that he doesn't love the one that he's chastising, right?
Yeah, I love my wife like the tiger. Exactly. I caught the tiger by the tail.
I don't
Yeah,
know if
it's
the
true.
analogy breaks down there. I'm not sure how that applies.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But yeah, it's true. If we focus on this all-pervasive, equal aspect, then we drift into impersonalism. So
No. It's yes and no. Yes,
yeah,
we
it's
do
both.
love everybody.
It's both.
It's not impersonal to love everybody, but we don't treat them the same way because Krishna says, as they approach me, I reward them accordingly. That's scripture. It doesn't mean that he doesn't love everybody. He only loves these guys. He doesn't love those guys. No, Krishna actually loves everybody. And we actually also love everybody underneath everything. But we can't treat them the same way because they're approaching us differently. People have free will. I have to jump off here. What's that?
This close-up of Adi's head is the scariest thing in the world. I do not love this close.
It's a little tricky because we're walking around here. Here's Das.
And Ananda Bihari, Hare Krishna. Ananda Bihari, you're going to experience.
I'm gonna hell. I'm gonna walk over.
Then close the door.
Hold on, Adi is yelling. Let me mute him. Hold it. Okay, Bhima Prabhu, go ahead. Where am I going?
I hope your wife didn't hear your comments because you're going to end up like Hiranyakashipu being eviscerated.
Yeah. Sometimes I push them.
Our wives are here. Our significant others, everyone, are here to make us better devotees. You know, we have to be tolerant and more humble than a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. So you can imagine what it takes to become like that. And sometimes a good, strong, passionate, self-correcting commitment to another person teaches us what we need to become. We're committed for the sake of commitment. We love for the sake of loving. We hold on for the sake of holding on. we do that, and then we start to understand what is necessary to deal with to develop a relationship and eventually come to love Krishna, because Krishna is no less of a challenge than any challenge that can be offered in this world. So that was a wonderful class. Thank you very much, Prabhu, for inviting Prabhujini to give class. Hare Krishna.
Urmila Devi Dasi is great. She's very knowledgeable, very intelligent. Okay, any questions, comments? We can take a few more. Yeah, if we deny the personal aspect of bhakti, then it's impersonalism. We don't want to deny. So it's both. I love my wife and I love Bhima Prabhu, but I love them differently. Don't want to mix them up. Okay. All right, let's take one more comment, please. Unmute yourself. If you don't unmute yourself, I will nominate the reflector. Who wants to reflect? Siham, what would you like to reflect? Oh, Bava, you're next. Let Siham talk.
Well, let Baba speak first. Please go ahead.
Bava.
I was just going to say, I hope you love Bhima differently than your spouse, because the beard should get in the way.
I'll be very careful to distinguish between.
No, but like it's true.
I always feel uncomfortable at the end of every class, and now I know why.
No, see, loving differently and depending on how people treat you is very, it's a very big thing to overcome for me. I know that's one of the things that I struggle with sometimes is being even.
Yes, yeah. I just had like a heated discussion with one devotee. No names will be given, but then we made peace, and it felt so great. Now, sometimes, like a loving exchange is necessary to experience peace and union, right? Siham?
Well, I don't have a lot to say, but just the word love for me has to be accompanied by the other word genuine. Otherwise, like for myself, I feel it's all about being selfish. So if it's not genuine and conditional for me, it's not worth it. And I mean, as you said, we don't love all the people the same way, but at the end of the day, it has to be genuine.
And what does it mean to be genuine? Siham, how do you understand it?
It's to be true, to be unmotivated. Just, yeah. Not wanting to gain or to attain anything out of it.
That's right. Yeah. We want nothing in return. Lord Chaitanya prays. We do service to do service without expecting anything in return. Yeah, thank you. Baba says, love is a word that is thrown around too easily. Love is not selfish. Yeah. Thank you, Baba. All right.
So,
okay, thank you very much. I recently discovered a punk rock band, and they have a song, "Everything Sucks, Love is the Answer." I found it very devotional. I found it in line with our philosophy. This world is a rough place. Love is the answer. And devotees association is the answer. To narrow it down a bit. Devotees association, prasadam is the answer. Is the answer. And everything else, let it suck. Who wants to experience it, let them enjoy it. I'm not going to bother, but we as devotees, our business is to get closer to Krishna by service. I'm rambling on. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, nice seeing you all. Take good care of yourself, your spiritual true self. Come back tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Jeffrey Eckler, get in the pool, open the Bhagavatam, and chill. Deva floaty, and send me a selfie. You on the floaty, reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah.